I've got 2 questions for you. Could you explain who you are, what you're doing now and where you're from, but also what you now know about new brand behaviour that you didn't know before? So should we start with you, Abba?
You so didn't ask this question in advance.
What, who you are? I think you're going to be all right on that one.
So I'm Abba. I'm the CMO of a digital mortgage business called Habito. I don't know if any of you have heard of us. We're still very small. We have only 10% brand awareness in the UK and about 20% advertising awareness. And prior to that, my background is I'm guilty of being one of those marketing directors who's got a background in advertising and media. And I also spent 6 years working for Rupert Murdoch. So what have I learned about 21st century brands? I guess the biggest thing that I've learned, and I'm going to totally disagree with the guy from Sapiens who's just spoke just now. Yeah.
Good, an argument. That's what we want.
Is that there is this belief, particularly in like really fast growth businesses, and we are Silicon Valley backed at Habito, that you can just make a product and they will come. And actually, a lot of what I've learned is that those old things that we've learned around kind of building brands and understanding psychology, and really thinking about the kind of the placement of your messaging as well as those are all really, really, really important, and that we have to balance the two: a great product and a great brand, distributed and marketed in the right way, are the most important things. And I think it's really interesting with brands like Monzo, who have seen enormous growth, but they are now at their peak of that growth and have turned to something as traditional as TV to drive them to the next stage. So don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, I say.
Ollie.
Cool.
Sorry, Simon.
Hi, I'm Ollie. I'm currently leading brand and creative at Deliveroo, and then prior to that, I was at Twitter for many years, leading global brand. So in terms
of prior to that?
Prior to that, I was working in media agencies, creative agencies. I've done a bit of everything.
So you've been every side.
Kind of, yeah. So I kind of tend to agree, actually. So I guess over the course of Twitter and now Deliveroo, I think one of my big learnings has been that literally your brand identity and also how you build that brand can almost happen in any way, actually. And there are lots and lots of different ways depending on the different company you're at. So on the one hand, Twitter did not have an awareness challenge. Most people have heard of Twitter. Good or bad, you've probably got an opinion of it, you've probably heard of it. But kind of infiltrating culture and controlling our story was very, very important. Like, how could we actually get credit for the outsized role that the brand plays in the world? So that had a certain type of kind of approach. Deliveroo, on the other hand, we found that very similar to the Monzo example, that kind of more traditional forms of brand building are super important. So, we're in a top-of-mind awareness business, we're in a kind of brand consideration business, and going into multiple markets, and we buy a lot of TV, for example. So I would say, kind of in summary, that probably the most important thing is actually having a very clear idea of what your brand is and a brand purpose, because in all of the presentations you're hearing, there are literally so many different things you could do that I think the hardest thing about the job is what do you do and what don't you do? And the only way you can answer those questions is by having a very clear understanding of what your brand stands for.
Cheryl.
Going to get Valentine's agreement, I think.
Don't disagree, go on.
I normally can. So I'm Cheryl. I am now CMO of a little sleep wellness business called Eve Sleep. If we're going to do a brand awareness off, I think we've just hit 15. So equally very little.
Muzzle tov.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah, it was a pleasing moment. Yeah. And before that, I was at Unilever and Birdseye and then the AA. So I am definitely a big, ugly corporate beast that's made the leap to the scary world of startup or scale up. I think the marathon, not a sprint phrase is interesting. So I think in big business, you kind of really feel like you're in a marathon. And even though you're always sprinting, you kind of know you're in a marathon and it's a 100-year-old brand and you've got all this legacy to deal with. And then in a small business, a startup business, a younger business, it really feels like a sprint. And everyone is sprinting really, really hard. And I think if there's something that corporates or the big old legacy businesses should fear, it's about how fast these little businesses are sprinting and trying stuff and learning and trying again and trying again. We'll go again and again and again at something until we get it right. And I think that is something big businesses struggle with. They tend to go, we tried that, it failed. Okay, what's the next 2-year project to try?
So you're finding a step change in terms of agility?
Yeah, I don't even know if agility is the right word. It's just willingness. It's just, you've got to try and fail because 99% of what you do is going to fail because you're new at it, you know? You're a baby learning to walk. You're going to fall over a lot.
And I guess, though, there are, and I don't know if this is true of all three of you, there are less heuristics. There's less, we've always done it like this, and so we're going to carry on doing it like this, which is frightening, freeing?
Both.
Both.
Definitely. Both.
Freeing, challenging, but freeing. Like, you're constantly... How do you maintain a brand when everything around you is changing? Yeah. Your product market fit might be changing. Different markets have different kind of product market fits. How do you maintain a consistent brand when literally everything else is changing? I think is one of the bigger challenges of high growth businesses.
As a marketer, though, it's ridiculously liberating. Like, I was literally just standing over there thinking, we could open a whole set of Airbnbs. We could become a hotel business.
You could, yeah.
Like, you can literally do that level of pivoting, you know.
Yeah. What have you changed your mind about since you moved to your current brands? Abba, have you changed your mind about anything?
I guess when I walked in, I changed the whole brand strategy.
Okay. Tell us a bit about that.
Which was a bit dangerous. So, yeah, I walked in, we had a really, like, passive brand. We had, like, a cappuccino wash, and we talked about a little lift in the world of getting a mortgage, and I was just like, that's bullshit. If you're going to take on the world and take on the banks, you've got to be, like, angry and purposeful and do some, like, stuff that no one else is going to do. And I guess working in a startup is super liberating, but it's also terrifying. No one's tweeting me, are they? Because my founder, a guy called Dan Hegarty, who's a great believer in brand building, he said to me, you've got to remember, Abba, watching someone present creative work to me is a little bit like watching someone make love to my wife. And they actually did a survey of entrepreneurs, and they looked at the way they look at their brands, and they looked at the way that they looked at their babies, and they were exactly the same thing. They're like, they're not like in a business. Okay. It's not like Habito is Dan's baby, Dan's wife, not just a brand that might be around for 100 years. So it is liberating because you can do anything, but you also do have a kind of a CEO who will have more views on marketing than probably in any other type of business. So we went from kind of cappuccino, I don't know if any of you, none of you will have seen it. We had an ad about an algorithm, and it was terrible, a sorting algorithm. And then we went from that to comedy, mortgage, death. Yeah. And it seems to be working for us. Yeah.
Ollie, have you changed your mind about anything?
Sort of, no. Is that okay? Is that an acceptable answer? Not really. I think the...
Is that because you were always right?
No. Actually, I'm sure I've changed my mind about some things. I think I have a new appreciation coming from a social platform. It's sometimes easy to drink one's own Kool-Aid and to think that the only way that you can build a brand is by engaging in culture. Yeah. And look, I still hold on to those beliefs as being very important to the brand. However, if you want to communicate those at scale, and if you want to move as fast as some of the companies we're talking about, looking at that media mix has changed quite considerably. Mm-hmm. And not everything can be built through conversation. I think it's still super important to defining the brand. Equally, that emotional connection can come through experience or through social, but do you know what? TV is really good for that. Yeah. So I think it's not that I didn't believe there was value in that, but it's certainly given me a new appreciation of acting somewhere between a traditional brand and a new brand is often where the value lies.
It's a spectrum.
Yep.
Cheryl, have you changed your mind about it?
I think the big thing is whether or not marketing works. So I've spent, God knows, 15, 16, 17 years standing in front of boards convincing them that marketing works. Here's my econometrics, here's my brand tracking. I promise. And they spent all that time looking at me going, looks a bit like voodoo to me. And not really believing me. And you get to a point, you read Les, you read Peter Carmen, you read everything, you go, God, I've got to believe this shit because I'm standing up and I'm talking about it. But you're never 100% sure. You're never even more than 90% sure, I think. And then you get into a scale up. And I did this, I got in and I did some tidying up like you do in a new business, you know. Tidied up the media, tidied up the promotions, and then promptly everything fell off a bloody cliff. And my CEO rang me and said, what have you done? I said, well, I've just tidied up. I just tidied up. He said, unfucking tidy. So it really makes a difference what you do.
So tell us what you tidied away.
Oh, well, I'd cut some of what I thought was ineffective marketing. Yeah. I'd reduced the promotional depth. I'd taken some stuff off deal. I'd just done the practical things that you do without a proper understanding of the business and what was driving sales, because in my heart of heart, I didn't believe sales were that responsive to marketing. Yeah. And in a small business, where you've got, 15% brand awareness, tiny brand equity, huge amount of competitors, they really make a difference.
So the responsiveness is just that you can feel it that much.
Oh
of
my
course,
God.
because
Day to
you're
day.
selling Marmite, people know about Marmite, but
Yeah.
okay, Eve sleep. It's you're telling new people are discovering you all the time.
And a digital business and a competitive business and yada yada, you know.
One of the things I've heard you talk about, and it was mentioned quite a lot this morning, and I heard you talk about it at Media 360, so I'm going to bring it up again if that's okay, is purpose. Mm-hmm. So it was talked about, quite a lot this morning. I certainly saw case studies for it at the IPA Effectiveness Awards. I also saw it get discussed a lot with a lot of contention. You're not sure about purpose at all?
Look, I have a rant about this. I can do the rant. I've done the rant before. This used to be called customer insight, consumer insight. Yeah, this just used to be the meaningful central insight around which you structured your brand. On Marmite, antidote to bland. Is that a purpose? To make life more exciting? Well, I mean, nowadays we describe it as your brand purpose is to make life more interesting. In the olden days, it was just an insight that said people don't like bland things and life is full of blandness, and Marmite can change that. In Eve, we help you sleep well. Yeah, that's really simple. Our purpose is to help the nation sleep better. That's because that's a bloody good insight, and it's the reason people buy beds. It's not because, I do have a bit of a, greater good thing, and it's great for our employees, and it's great for the team, but in reality, this is consumer insight just taken to the powerful place it should be.
Ollie, do you have a purpose?
Do I have an opinion on purpose? I don't disagree.
What is Deliveroo's purpose?
I'm actually working on that right now. As I guess it's like routine. It's a very hyper-local business.
People have got to eat, right?
People have to eat. So this is the thing about whether it's customer insight, whether it's purpose. Most of businesses that seem like the customer insight is very simple, like, I don't know, people need to sleep better, people need to eat better. Normally, as you uncover those, there are pretty profound implications, particularly in tech companies, in high growth companies, where whether you like it or not, you may change the world, right? In ways big and small. So whether it's called purpose or not, I think it's just being very clear on those customer insights have the potential to change things good and bad. And it's just an acceptance of like the role that you play in that. And I think for Twitter, you could argue that there's potentially larger impact or larger potential to change people's life, but I kind of don't believe that. Like, having people have a better night's sleep is super meaningful. It's really important. Having people bank better and not see money as a chore, but maybe as seeing money more in the same way that they might have, I don't know, think of their Apple Watch and it being turned into a positive thing. Like, I think these are actually incredibly meaningful. When you think about emotional connection with consumers, I think, yes, these are customer insights, but I think it's how far you're willing to take them in terms of the roles they play in people's lives. And I think purpose is a good way of thinking about that.
Abba? Habito? Purpose?
Purpose, setting people free from the hell of mortgages. And I guess that we are purpose-driven because we were founded by Dan, who had a shit experience getting his mortgage and thought it's got to be better. And also, like, I'm agreeing with Cheryl, it's insight-driven because for most people, their experience of getting a mortgage is stressful and generally and hellish. And I guess our advertising model isn't very sophisticated. We literally play out that hellish experience and promise people that we'll solve it for them.
A better way. How has your approach to data changed from let me start with you, from your old world to your new world?
Well, I used to work at news, right? So I'm used to dealing with like the NRS.
The NRS. Bless it.
And the Audit Bureau of Circulations and other such wonderful devices. Like, Habito is like super data-driven. We watch everything, every movement of every number, every single day, every single minute of the day, which is both good and terrible. Because we're small enough for most of those data movements to not be meaningful and not statistically significant. So something can go down and everyone goes, oh no, marketing's broken or the product's broken. And it's just, it's Wednesday and it's raining and something's good on TV. Like, it can be any reason. So the hard thing for us is to work out really what are the important movements and what are the unimportant movements. And I guess the hardest thing for me is to not let marketing be judged in the short term. Because of course marketing does work in the short term. And we go onto TV, we see a big TV spot in Bake Off, and it suddenly, literally the session volume on our website spikes and everyone's like, yay, marketing works. But actually that's like 30% or 20% of what we want marketing to do, because marketing's got a 3 or 4 month window to keep having that effect. And I think that's really hard. And bigger businesses would love the short-term data that we have, and I would love us to be able to look longer term.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with that more. But having said that, if you're a marketer, you develop very quickly an instinct to you know where you're trying to go, right? I know in the long term what my objective is on a particular line of data, and you know the data is going to flip and flop up and down that line. But there's a point where, because you can see it on an hourly basis, where you go, okay, we're too far under, change. Let's go back and let's change again and change. I mean, about an hour ago, I changed our promo strategy, and that will be happening now back at base because I'm watching, the bloody conversion rate on a particular channel. So there is an ability to be nimble around the line of attack, I think, but you do have to know your line of attack. But one of the first things I did at Eve is I put my foot down and I said, well, I won't just have this data because this is not marketing data. We brought econometrics in, we're building various things which are much more useful for a longer term, and then you can plug the two things together. I think you're absolutely right. You can't be looking at one set without the other. But I came out of the AA where I didn't have any of this data, and I had to work on a sample of my audience from 2 years ago. I mean, it's insane how difficult the legacy businesses find getting to any real data.
And Ollie, I've heard one of your competitors talk about the fact that you're in a postcode battle, postcode by postcode battle. How do you cope with the data?
I think it's
in that sense.
It's literally postcode by postcode, town by town, country by country. So, literally we're drowning in data. Literally orders are streaming in right now. Orders are being fulfilled, and I think, as has been said, in that it's very easy to fall into the trap of just focusing in on very